Over the last 16 years, countless games have been released, resulting in many people forgetting about them as quickly as they came out. However, Skate 3 managed to not only create lifelong memories, but still remain relevant to this day. But how has it survived, even years after being abandoned? Was it the perfectly broken gameplay, or the iconic soundtrack? In this video, we are going to figure out exactly what made Skate 3 unforgettable.
Skate 3, it's the best game ever, period.
Now do a flip trick and land in.
The year Skate 3 was released plays a much bigger role than you previously thought. 2010 was roughly only a year after the Great Recession. Many of us were young and had little to no concept of money. But the recession impacted everyone, directly and indirectly. As people looked for ways to save money, focus would shift to video games. While they weren't exactly cheap, the one-time investment of $60 for thousands of hours of entertainment was a no-brainer. This is when games stopped being disposable, as Americans looked for ways to stretch their dollar. Meanwhile, in Canada, the EA Black Box team was working tirelessly to outdo their previous successes, Skate 1 and 2. With the only competition for Skate really being the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series, they pretty much set their own standards. Come May 11th, the hard work from Black Box would finally be shown to the world. Americans headed to their local retailers to hopefully purchase the third installment of the Skate series. The previous games from the series were pretty widely enjoyed, so players' expectations were high but not unreasonable for Skate 3. As excited fans arrived home to eagerly insert the disc, it was clear that this was going to be very different from any Skate they've seen, but different in a way players wouldn't understand quite yet. Over at Venice Beach, California, a promotional event hosted by EA for the official release of Skate 3 was held. The pro skaters that were featured as characters in the game, like Mike Carroll, Chris Cole, Josh Callis, attended it. While the event wasn't huge, it still connected fans to the game and the team, a bridge that's not so common for modern games. Those who didn't make the event were at home eagerly waiting to play, as they went through the iconic tutorial with Coach Frank yelling at you for no reason in the famous cinematic intro movie. Upon completing the tutorial, players were thrown into the Skate 3 map, Port Carverton, and were met with an overwhelming amount of content, the challenges, which are the core of the game, with each completed challenge giving you more board sales to unlock different items like boards and other clothing, to eventually complete the game. Understanding this aspect of the game really helps capture what made this game so unique. Death races were a downhill and extremely fast-paced race against other skaters. You could collide with other players, which definitely created some really funny and annoying moments. If you weren't punching other skaters to get ahead, then you didn't truly play the game. The film and photo challenges had you do specific tricks at the designated location to film promotional content for your skate team. This would also be the first time players experienced using the replay system. Hall of Meat was the only challenge that didn't center around skating. The goal was to jump off different buildings or to bail and break as many bones as possible. Hall of Meat as a whole would become symbolic to the Skate series and important to the Skate 3 legacy. Street contests, which were a personal favorite of mine, a round-based competition with each one having different rules, like staying out of a specific area or doing specific tricks to get as many points as possible. Your competition was the other NPCs that were actual pro skaters and were actually voiced by that skater. This is a pretty small detail, but it added so much to the game, since NPCs in current games are usually just generic names, with no actual correlation to the game or real-world meaning. The park was set up like a real skate contest, with an area for the audience, barricades, and speakers for the music and announcer that commentated over the contest. The variety of challenges were a big reason the game stood out from any others, since most games force linear progression and feel like a checklist. Skate 3 did challenges, but with a training approach, and not in a boring way either. Each challenge seemed pretty simple, but each one taught different aspects of the game. Whether it was how to bail, do specific tricks, each challenge had a purpose. Players that skated instantly noticed how accurate the representation of skate culture was. Most games only simulate the skating, and not the culture as well, having to retry repeatedly until you perfected the trick. Sure, you did 2 out of the 3 tricks, but you bailed on the third. Now you have to start all over again. Skating is just that. Whether you're skating for a clip or for fun, every skater knows the frustration of getting 90% of the trick done. The rewarded commitment alone enforces the part about skate culture that makes it what it is. There is no winning in skating. The more you replayed the challenges, the less it felt like a game mechanic, and the more it felt familiar. At this point, this is enough to make a good game. But this is where we start to see what made it an unforgettable game. The tutorial as a whole is perfect. Coach Frank teaches the basics, but after that, you're thrown into the game. This is a major factor that scares newcomers away from skating. There is no rulebook for skating. There's no linear progression. You learn tricks in any order. And the only way to learn those tricks is through basic trial and error. Up until now, the fans loved everything about Skate 3. But this is where we would start to see how strong the game really was. Support for the Skate 3 servers would last until 2016, when EA would officially shut them down, discontinuing online features like community parks and online play. Even though Skate 3 was a mostly solo game, the amount of players that would be affected by this change was fairly small. Regardless, it signified decline, as the servers weren't bringing in enough money to cover costs. Most games would naturally die here, and back at the Black Box studio, they met a similar fate, being shut down in April of 2013. Now that the Skate series basically had its plug pulled, naturally players would try to migrate to a newer game, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, Session, or Skater XL. The release of Skate 3 had little to no competitors at the time. Even though they created the standards for skate games, they set that bar extremely high. No game could even come close to Skate 3. Even if they simulated skating, they couldn't exactly simulate the culture like Skate 3 did. But what made the culture? The most obvious element being the usage of known skate brands, like Santa Cruz skateboards, Baker, Spitfire wheels, and Thunder trucks, just to name a few. The inclusion of real-world brands didn't stop here. We saw branded products from Adidas, Nike SB, eMerica, and Vans, in the clothing and accessories. This wasn't limited to skate-adjacent brands, like brands seen throughout the map, such as Miracle Whip, Monster, Dr. Pepper, and T-Mobile. Many games will avoid using actual brands because that typically means sharing the revenue. I think it's important to mention that this has been done in newer games, like Fortnite and Roblox, but completely wrong. The brand collab just feels like an ad being shoved in your face, and is really poorly integrated with the core game. Skate 3 was able to get away with it because of its ability to integrate it perfectly. Instead of it feeling like an ad, it actually improved player experience by making it feel more immersive, and made the game even more memorable. The usage of not only pre-existing and known songs, but fitting songs by popular artists and bands is an extremely important factor in making the game as significant as it is. Soundtracks can make or break a game. But in 2010, soundtracks were more vital than ever. Spotify wouldn't be released in the US until 2011, and even then, most people still discovered their music through movies, the radio, and most importantly, games. This placed more stress on the developers to curate a compelling soundtrack, but it was really a benefit because it allowed developers to leverage this, and make their game even more notable. Skate 3 executed this perfectly. The soundtrack captures genres popular within skate culture, like punk rock with Debaser by Pixies, post-punk with Disorder by Joy Division, even some modern rap with Put On by Young Jeezy. Early 2000s hip-hop with Put 'Em in Their Place by Mobb Deep. And finally blues, more specifically blues rock, with a personal favorite of mine, Going Up the Country by Canned Heat. The soundtrack curation alone is good. There was clear thought put into it, capturing a large variety of music that's popular within the scene, since a core principle of skating is bringing people from different backgrounds, whether it be cultural, financial, age, or race. Skating culture is built on this concept. If you go to a skate park, you're gonna see people of every background. Just like the soundtrack, they all coexist. Some might argue that it's coincidental, but it is clearly intentional when you take a look at more recent games that take the same route of including a diverse soundtrack, with the big difference being that these songs were only chosen because they're popular. The Skate 3 soundtrack includes a handful of songs that aren't very popular or are only popular now because of the game, like Born to Lose by Johnny Thunders, Brand New Vandals by Rob Sonic, or Cool Out Sun by Junior Mervin. These are perfect examples. For a lot of players, this was more than just background music. It would be their first introduction to songs that they would associate with a specific time period in their life. Even more important to skate culture is clothing. This is something a lot of games get wrong really easily, and it makes it just feel like cosplay. Brands like LRG, Crew, Circa, Volcom were pretty known and heavily associated with the skate scene during this era. Now these brands aren't really known or even seen at all. The same goes for shoes. I mean, in 2025, you really don't see anyone wearing those chunky shoes by DC or Osiris. Skating is supposed to have a low entry barrier and centered around raw skill and creativity, rather than price or status. Since skating was a big part of anti-culture, it caused skateboarding to be pretty negatively perceived by the outside world, and the developers were very aware of this, and they didn't try to glamorize it. The rough, unfiltered image gave the game a personality. Skate 3 wasn't shy about the involvement of pro skaters, which added a sense of authority since these people were a part of the community, and were involved with the actual development. A lot of games treat these appearances of big names like some sort of god, a god that you would only see in cinematic cutscenes or from a distance. While it might be true for some sports, it's not for skating. Different pro skaters were featured within the challenges or just skating around the map, and the subtle inclusion of these big names within the scene may not seem important, but in reality, it was another aspect of skate culture that was perfectly nailed. If you lived in the same area as a pro skater or a famous skater, you would probably see them at a local park. Local skate communities are really tight-knit. While you are obviously the main character in Skate 3, the storyline treats you as just another skater, trying to make a name for yourself. This clear absence of social hierarchy didn't just add a sense of realism, but it made players feel welcome, which goes back to what skate culture is. Everyone has a place. A lot of sports games like to base the story off of becoming the best and being above everyone else, but Skate 3 just wants you to be a part of it. The pro skaters were cool, but they only represent the positive side of skate culture. The NPCs that walk around main areas capture the mixed opinions of skaters that many outsiders feel. Skating past an NPC meant they almost always made some sort of comment. Most games just leave it at that. While you can't directly interact with NPCs, doing tricks in front of them, skating too close for them, falling or running into them can trigger some different dialogue. Some NPCs are really aggressive, and some just don't care, which is probably the most realistic approach. And it definitely is a bit more exaggerated than how these encounters play out in real life. The reality of it is, people will try to create issues with you or make snarky comments at you if you're skating in public. One really good feature is the ability to just smack them if they talk too much. And that's not something you can really do in real life, at least legally. The NPCs recreate the real-life encounters skaters face. This captured something most games purposely avoid, which is the feeling of being perceived, ignored, and hated, but all at once. Skate 3 is an open-world game, so it's a given that the map should be made to explore, which is something it does well, and is often praised for. But it causes the Easter eggs that made the map so memorable to be overlooked. The feature most people probably never realized is that your team stickers being placed around the map increased as you sold more boards. This is my favorite Easter egg because of the reality of it. I'm not sure how many of you guys actually skate, but if you've ever bought skate decks or even just merchandise, you know about the sticker that's always included. And obviously the more boards or products you sell, the more stickers that are going to be distributed. A more subtle detail like the 420 being on the time on almost every clock, or just the date being set to April 20th, which could have been added as a joke since it was popular in meme culture at the time, but it is heavily associated with skating, and is a representation of counterculture. The popular cheat codes that did different things like McFly, that turned your skateboard into a hoverboard, or Zombie, that turned all pedestrians into zombies. And finally, the two most unique features, being the Meat Man and Dem Bones, that were rewarded for completing Hall of Meat challenges. These two characters were important since they shed a positive light on the failure aspect of skating, framing it as something to celebrate and not be ashamed of. None of these directly impacted how you played the game, but they were responsible for how it was remembered. Up until now, everything that made Skate 3 what it is has been in the game. This is where the game would become more influential than expected. 2012 would really be the beginning of gaming content blowing up on YouTube, with Skate 3 being released only 2 years prior. The community would post clips from the game, like funny Hall of Meat moments, crazy glitches that they would find like the speed glitches, or just interesting moments that the game would inevitably produce. The game already had a large fan base since launch, but the videos posted to YouTube exposed the game to a much larger audience than before. Skate 3 videos were the easiest to consume for viewers, since no distinct storyline meant it was easy to follow. The obscure and endless amount of glitches alone made Skate 3 more loved than ever, since the developers didn't rush to try and fix or patch these glitches out of fear of making the game look low effort. The developers and the community actually took the opposite approach and embraced the glitches, since they didn't make the game unplayable, but they actually added a new appeal to the game that wasn't there before, and the community praised them for it. The extent of these glitches didn't even matter, since the fans could clearly see how much effort was put into the game. This obviously grew the initial player base, but it was also important in making the game more than just a memory for players. Seeing your player do all of these crazy flip tricks and jump over everyday objects naturally made you wonder if you could do it too. Whether people admit it or not, Skate 3 is a huge part of why people started skating, including myself. Skating would just be a short-lived hobby for most people, but some completely fell in love with it. After a bit, skating goes from just I need skate shoes to I should try baggier clothes, until it eventually gets into every aspect of your life. This is a defining aspect of what made Skate 3 unforgettable. The idea of skating has Skate 3 written all over it. When someone asks, what got you into skating? Regardless of what you tell them, in the back of your head you know it was Skate 3. When a game becomes tied to something that shaped who you are, it becomes more than just a game. Think about how much has changed in the last year. Your mindset, living situation, relationships. Now, even 16 years later, Skate 3 is still the same game it was then. 16 years is a long time. Aside from the great gameplay Skate 3 offered, the music, the graphics, and the clothing were sealed within the game. A time capsule that holds everything we associate with a much simpler time in our lives. Imagining a time when we all knew less will always seem better. Skate 3 was released in a much different climate for the video game market, when companies saw players as more than just a number. Every developer's desire to be ahead of the rest is the exact reason a lot of our favorite games were released around this time. To say just the glitches or the soundtrack is the reason this game is unforgettable is like saying the cheese or the lettuce is what makes a burger good. Without the rest, a soundtrack is just a soundtrack. And a piece of cheese is just a piece of cheese. The aspect that Skate 3 accomplished that many games never will is that everything fits together seamlessly. Thank you so much for watching. This video was really fun to make, but it took a really long time. I'd really appreciate if you tap the like button and subscribe. We can definitely hit 10,000 subscribers this year. Thank you again for watching all the way to the end. Good night.